let's just allow for people to come in, but in the meantime, we can start. So let me just share my screen. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lamise Ixtian. This is my colleague Daniel, who will be assisting on the technical side and the behind the scenes work on this webinar. You are in the right place if you are here for the Building Back ESD after a rough year, perspectives from South Africa, USA, and England. I'm going to hand over to our newly appointed General Manager, Cindy Lee Kluter, who will facilitate the webinar. But before I do, I just want to share some house rules with you. So firstly, only the panelists and the facilitators video and sound will be switched on. Everybody else, if you can please engage with us on the chat box. And if you have specific questions for either the facilitator or the speaker or for WESA in general, you can engage with us on the Q&A section. Post questions and comments throughout the webinar. Don't wait until we say you can now post. We will engage throughout. And then there will be a Q&A session after the second speaker, which Cindy will inform us when. Myself and Daniel will collate the questions and pose it to the panelists and the facilitator. If any of you want to share this webinar afterwards, you are welcome to, because it will be recorded. It will be on our WESA Live YouTube channel and also on the WESA website. You can find it under news, media, and videos. But if you are registered, we will share all this information with you again post-webinar. We will also have a short survey that you can give us feedback on. So yeah, handing over to Cindy now. Enjoy the first webinar of 2021. We are very excited about the series of webinars that are coming for the next 6 months. Thank you again for joining us. And yeah, Cindy will tell you about the exciting webinar and the speakers that we have for today. So over to you, Cindy.
Great, thank you, Lamise. Good afternoon to everybody. Well, here in South Africa, but I know that we have friends from all over the world joining us today. So good morning, good evening to everyone, wherever you are. And that's also one of the beauties of this Education for Sustainable Development movement, the fact that we are connected to each other right across the world. I'd like to thank our WESA Schools and Youth team members for putting this webinar together for us. Lamise and Daniel in the background, making sure that no gremlins come in during this time. But it's also a very important webinar, especially as we return and we focus on rebuilding on education, our environmental and sustainability work. In South Africa, our vaccination program actually started yesterday, where we saw the president get his jab in Khayelitsha. And as a country, we are now thus going into a new rebuilding phase as we learn to live with the presence of COVID-19. And as an Education for Sustainable Development movement, it is important for us to look at how we build back and contribute to the way forward beyond COVID-19. We have heard and agreed that we cannot go back to normal. And I've got no doubt that we all understand that we cannot go back to a normal situation. But the question really is then, how do we move forward? In fact, I saw a cartoon with two children the other day, and the one child said to the other one, I cannot wait until all of this is over and we can go back to normal, kind of like referring to all of the lockdowns and the different schooling situations. And the other child then replied by saying, but what if we went forward instead? And I guess that's really the big question that all of us have. How do we build back going forward, knowing that we can't go back to normal? And we've seen so many statistics of food insecurity, unemployment, water and sanitation issues, education and health issues over this period. Issues and challenges that have always been there, but has now been exacerbated by this pandemic. One of the most memorable pictures I saw in a news article was the long queues of people in South Africa waiting to receive food parcels from government. That's something that I will never be able to forget. And it became clear that in South Africa, the COVID-19 response really intersects directly with education, food, water, and the economic crises that we already have. And also not forgetting about the psychosocial impact, that the pandemic has had and also still have on us. It is within this intersecting crisis, with this intersecting crises in mind, that I would like to encourage our movement to think about what we can learn and how we can use ESD to promote sustainability and inclusive futures in South Africa and in the country that you are in. So just looking at these crises or these challenges, like education, food, water, economic, psychosocial, and wanting to move forward, I would like for us to think about how our programs and our work can look at rethinking and reimagining the world of work. How do we change the current economic systems to become more inclusive, but also more sustainable? How can the program contribute to more sustainable food systems for all? Or better yet, how can we basically, with the work that we do, set up those systems and keep them going? How can our programs enhance, support, and transform education systems to include, for example, psychosocial support at the school level? And most importantly, how can we make resilience a reality? I feel like the word resilience is the new sustainability. Like the word is thrown around in every conversation, but what does it really mean for you, for me, for the students, for the teachers that engage in all of our programs that we implement? And what does it mean for us to think beyond resilience, to make it a reality? With all of that said, it's important to realize that we are not in this alone. And I'm actually really glad that we are not. We have a network of similarly passionate individuals across the world. And today we have two of them joining us. And I've had the wonderful privilege of working with Laura and Lee over the past 4 years through the South African Ecoschools, LEAF, and YRE programs. Laura and Lee, between the two of them, have over 50 years of experience. So we're in definite good hands today. Just a little bit about Laura. After 33 years in 2017, Laura retired from the National Wildlife Federation, which is the United States' largest conservation education organization. Laura was instrumental in setting up the Ecoschools Program in the US through the National Wildlife Federation in 2009. And today the program reaches over 5,300 schools, 135 teachers, and some 2.9 million students in the US. Since 2014, Laura has also served as an elected board director for the Foundation for Environmental Education and have global responsibilities for the Ecoschools program. Our second guest, Lee, is the Ecoschools manager for England at Keep Britain Tidy. Having spent over 20 years working in EE, both in the classroom and as an independent consultant, Lee and her team constantly strive to engage and motivate schools to take part in the Ecoschools program. From preschool to college, from classroom to homeschool, the Ecoschools team in England are always looking to develop and grow the program to help young people lead environmental change. So today they will share with us their perspective from the United States and England. And as a collective, I want us to start looking at how we as a movement build back through ESD or with ESD after the rough year that we've had. So I encourage everybody to engage us, myself, Lee, and Laura, through the platforms that Lamisa have basically opened up for us, the Q&A platform and the chat platform. And we know that obviously we have a lot of differences between our three countries and also the countries that you're all from. But at the same time, we also have so much in common, and collectively we can make a difference. So without further ado, Laura, I would like to hand over to you now to take us on your journey.
Great, thank you so much. I'll just share my screen. Good, we're all set. So my thanks to Cindy and the WESA team for inviting me to participate in today's webinar. My name is Laura Hickey, and as Cindy said, I am on the Board of Directors for the Foundation for Environmental Education based in Copenhagen, Denmark. I am located near Washington, D.C. in the United States. It is early morning for me, and it's actually snowing here today, and as opposed to your beautiful summer in South Africa. And I think that what Cindy said really resonated with me, just about the need for resilience, the need for us to build forward, not look back, but to build forward. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about our education programs that the Foundation for Environmental Education has, as well as just environmental education in general. So the Foundation for Environmental Education, which we generally call FEE, because it's a lot easier to say, has 5 environmental education programs. 3 are school-based: Ecoschools, Young Reporters for the Environment, and Learning About Forests, and 2 are tourism-based: Blue Flag and Green Key. Today I'm going to tell you a little bit about our school-based programs. Ecoschools is our largest school-based program, involving almost 60,000 schools worldwide in 68 countries. We generally add 1 to 2 countries per year to the program. I think it's actually up to 70 right now. Young Reporters involves 275,000 students in over 42 countries. And Learning About Forests, which we call LEAF, is in 28 countries, reaching 700,000 students. Ecoschools is the largest FEE program, and it encourages young people to engage in their environment by allowing them the opportunity to actively protect it. It starts in the classroom, expands to the entire school and the community, and fosters change in general at both the school, in the family, and in the community. Through the program, young people develop so many skills that will aid them throughout their lives. Not only 21st century skills, but leadership development, curiosity, commitment, exposure to real-world situations, and a sense of agency and voice. Schools work towards certification and the prestige which comes with being awarded a green flag. Ecoschools utilizes a 7-step methodology that is patterned after the ISO 14001 environmental management process. Students form an eco committee. They perform an environmental review of the school. Based on the results of that, they develop an action plan to improve the environment. They monitor and evaluate their progress over time. They establish links to the existing curriculum. They involve the greater school community, and they develop an eco code or an ethos for the school. The Ecoschools program is an ideal way for schools to embark on a meaningful path towards improving the environment in both the school and the local community. And it provides hands-on experiential learning through a project-based learning approach. In 2016, WESA hosted our national operators meeting in Johannesburg. That's the picture on the left. And I had a visit to Monday primary school, which absolutely changed my life. I was captivated by the students and the teachers and their unwavering commitment to sustainability. I believe it's a platinum eco school, which means it has been awarded multiple times over the years. I've never seen anything quite like that school, and the students and the teachers, it just really rang true to my heart and underscored how important it is to have a program like Ecoschools that's being utilized by schools. Young Reporters, which we call YRE, gives young people ages 11 to 25 a platform to research environmental issues in their local communities and promote solutions through investigative reporting, photography, and video journalism. Through the program, young people are empowered and take an educated stand on those environmental issues they feel strongly about. And the program gives them a platform to articulate these issues through writing, photography, or video. There's both a national and an international competition, and participants can be individual students, groups, or entire schools. The students learn how to research, how to separate fact from fiction, how to develop a case study, and how to accurately and creatively create a report on environmental issues they feel are not being adequately addressed in their community. They offer and highlight potential solutions as well. In today's age where information is readily available and immediate, YRE helps students hone their communication skills, helps them develop critical thinking and analysis, social responsibility, and leadership. YRE utilizes a 4-step methodology, which includes to investigate, research solutions, report, and disseminate. LEAF, Learning About Forests, has undergone several changes in recent years, but today it is an informal education program that advocates outdoor learning and hands-on experiences that allows students to have a deeper, more involved understanding of the natural world. Using the forest as the natural landscape, students learn more about their natural surroundings and about what an important part they play in our lives. In today's digital world and the prevalence of nature deficit disorder, it is imperative to get children outdoors and immersed in nature. They benefit from being outside. They learn about the ecological web, life cycles, and the need for balance between mankind and nature. LEAF is a fun and action-oriented program that benefits people of any age. So 2020 was a year of dramatic change for all of us, but particularly teachers and students. Teachers had to develop or employ so many different skills: pedagogical, technological, how to connect with students you can't currently see in person. How do you help them both emotionally and, academically? This was the year that impacted all of us in so many ways. As you are most intimately aware, with schools just going back on Monday in South Africa, COVID-19 caused the closing of educational institutions around the world in 2020, and even so far into this year. Here in the United States, we are still, in many places, not back in school. We have distance learning. It changes week to week and day to day on the decision on whether or not to allow teachers and students back in school. But President Biden, and I'm happy to say that, President Biden has said that he really hopes to have all schools back in, all students and all teachers back in school by the end of April. So we'll see. As by March 2020, just a few months into the pandemic, almost 1.4 billion students were impacted by school closures. As of January 2021, approximately 825 million learners are currently affected due to these same closures. These closures impact not only students, teachers, and families, but also have far-reaching educational, economic, and societal consequences. We saw the development and utilization of hybrid learning models, remote, in-person, blended learning, and so much more. 90% of countries adopted digital and/or broadcast remote learning, yet only 31% of school children don't have technology at home, showcasing how severe the digital divide truly is. So it's been a wild ride, but maybe there are a few bright spots from all of this. Vaccines have been and are being developed to help all of us to come out of this pandemic, but it will take time. Incredible resources, like you're going to see from Lee, have been developed by our school program national operators and utilized by teachers and families to keep their kids engaged. Families have spent more together time than ever before. We are spending more time out in nature and less time inside and online. Our lives have become more simple in many ways, and so many have shown kindness and compassion to others, especially those most affected and hard hit. I have seen a tremendous global solidarity. We are all fighting this, and our fight has spurred innovation and many people doing things differently. I see a new dawn coming, one in which we are changed but stronger. And I truly believe that out of chaos, we will continue the discussion of the need to rethink how we educate future generations, on what we need to teach, on how we best prepare students for life after school. COVID has showcased how globally interconnected we are, that there is no longer such a thing as isolated issues and actions. We need to prepare our students to be able to understand this interrelatedness and navigate across boundaries to leverage their differences and work in a globally collaborative way. As educators, we need to move towards facilitating young people's development as contributing members of society. We can help them to develop skills that employers will be looking for: creativity, communication and collaboration, empathy and emotional intelligence, and being able to work across demographic lines of differences to harness the power of the collective through effective teamwork. And that's where environmental education and education for sustainable development truly come into play. Through FEE's educational programs, students are exposed to and immersed in environmental education. This is hands-on, interactive learning that sparks the imagination and unlocks creativity. When it is integrated into the curriculum, students are more enthusiastic and engaged in learning, which raises student achievement in core academic areas such as reading and mathematics and science. It helps students to make connections and apply their learning in the real world. And it helps them see the interconnectedness of social, ecological, economic, cultural, and political issues. Environmental education encourages students to research, investigate how and why things happen, and make their own decisions about complex environmental issues. By developing and enhancing critical and creative thinking skills, environmental education helps foster a new generation of informed consumers, workers, as well as policy or decision makers. Environmental education encourages students to investigate varying sides of issues to understand the full picture. It promotes tolerance of different points of view and different cultures. It exposes students to nature and allows them to learn and play outside. It helps get them active and addresses some of the health issues we are seeing in kids today: obesity, attention deficit disorder, and depression. And it promotes a sense of place and connection through community involvement. When students decide to learn more or take action to improve their environment, they reach out to community experts, to family members, to donors, to volunteers, to help bring the community together, to understand and address environmental issues impacting their neighborhood. This promotes active learning, citizenship, and student leadership, and empowers youth to share their voice and make a difference. It also helps teachers build their own environmental knowledge and teaching skills. Even if we are slow coming back to face-to-face learning, it is important to realize that teaching can be done outside the classroom as well. Here you'll see some great ideas for outdoor learning spaces we are currently using here in the US, and how school gardens can be a great way to engage students in hands-on activities. When we think about a sustainable future, we need to use education as the basis for supporting the tenets of sustainability. We have the ability and the means to impart the necessary knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes through inspiration and innovation. Unlike most of you today, and you can probably tell because of my white hair, I am a baby boomer. But the majority of kids in our educational system today are from Generation Z, a generation that has grown up in a truly globalized world. It is a generation defined by technology, where the terms FOBA, fear of being alone, and FOMO, fear of missing out, express their expectation of instant communication and feedback, affected through apps like Instant Messenger, Snapchat, and WhatsApp. That also includes parents and educators, something being amplified with the current remote learning. But this generation, Gen Z, also sees the power of working collaboratively to solve the world's biggest challenges. And 88% of them say their generation has the power to change the world for better. We can help them. The Fee family is one network, and we are always here for one another. We utilize a community of practice approach, a group of people that take part in a common activity, talk and share information about that activity, and define themselves in relation to it. Imagine all of the South African schools and all the educators and coordinators, the parents, the students, the teachers, the school administrators being part of this community. Then add to this community all the other countries that have the Ecoschools, Young Reporters, and LEAF programs, their educators and coordinators, their parents, their students, and school administrators. Our common goal and interests are to prepare young people to develop the academic, social, and environmental knowledge and personal skills they need to be successful, fulfilled, and able to live in a sustainable world that they help build. And lastly, I wanted to let you know that I consider teachers to be the true heroes. The work that you do every day, in and out, to help prepare our young people is just so inspirational. In today's pandemic landscape, it may seem really daunting, but you are not alone. Our Fee network and all of our staff are here to help you in any way that we possibly can. I'll just leave you with this final image from my wonderful visit to South Africa, and with my sincere thanks for all that you do. If there's any way that I can help you, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Laura. I just picked up a few gems in that presentation that really speaks to a collective movement working together to build forward, and using, as one of the participants said, like best practices from what we've learned during this pandemic to like move forward and build back better. Really great presentation. And also the intergenerational learning approach is so important. Like you say, we've got the Gen Z that's currently in the education system, and how can we as the older generations incorporate them to make sure that they create, they build, they rebuild, they are able to, like, you know, take forward through education, knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes, a country, a school, a community, to lead them to sustainability. So really great to like also see how the Fee programs can enhance that learning at the school base and community base. And I hope that all the participants will who are teachers, principals in the education department, would help WESA to take out these programs to all of the schools in their districts, in their communities, so we can reach all of the schools across the country. Now we're going to move to Lee to share some of what they've been doing in England. Lee has done some great stuff over the COVID period with her team to engage learners both online and also at home, so that they can work with their parents and also see how they can contribute to not just actively being a part of the Ecoschools movement in England, but also actively be mindful in what they do and everything that they do in England. And I think it's an important step that we need to take in terms of psychosocial support for our learners and our parents and our teachers moving forward. So Lee, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Cindy. I'll just share my screen now with you all. I have a few short videos to share with you from some of our schools as well. Some of the work that's been happening. So I will play those. Hopefully the sound will be okay, but I know Cindy will be forwarding this presentation to everybody at the end, so you'll be able to listen to me in your own time as well. So good afternoon, good morning, Laura, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Lee Ray Davis. I'm the Ecoschools Manager for England at Keep Britain Tidy, and I've been in post now for just nearly 5 years. And I came into this position after working as a teacher and environmental educator for over 16 years. So a lot of what we do and a lot of what my team do for the Ecoschools program is tried and tested with our own students over many, many years. And what's really important to us at the Ecoschools program is we like to share best practice. We like to know what's working well for our schools, but we also actually, and we found with COVID, we like our schools to reach out and tell us what isn't working, because then that way we can make the adaptations and the resources that they've needed to carry on with the Ecoschools program. And so some of our best adaptations that I'll tell you about today have come about from teachers requesting and asking for new and better resources. So what I'm going to do today is give you a little bit of overview of the impact of COVID in England, and then kind of what that's led to and the changes that have come about with the Ecoschools program here in England, not just as our team, but our 20,000 schools in England as well. So here's just a very brief timeline from March 2020 to show you kind of what's happened with our schools, so we can put this into some kind of context of what we've been doing here in Ecoschools England. So back on the 20th of March 2020, all schools in England closed and homeschooling, remote schooling began. But actually in England, in reality, because many of our schools had to stay open for the children of key worker staff, actually a lot of our schools were still very busy. And what we were finding is schools were maybe struggling to continue to do the normal work, the normal curriculum work, when they had children for different age ranges in one class. And what they were saying was actually the Ecoschools work was something that was a normality as well for the children. And Laura mentioned it earlier before as well, with these new key worker children, and because it was going into spring, it was an opportunity to get outside with them and work on their Ecoschools actions linked to the school grounds, biodiversity and healthy living. So although schools closed, surprisingly, we remained equally as busy actually. And then from the 24th of March, we reacted quite quickly because, again, this was something that we wanted as a teacher. And I remember we have an international WhatsApp group where all the national managers share ideas and best practice. And we said about that we wanted to launch some remote learning resources. And I think it was might have been Laura that suggested we use #EcoSchoolsAtHome. So like we say, 4 days after, we launched this Ecoschools at Home campaign. And what that was a weekly set of resources that were linked to our Ecoschools topics for activities that could still be carried out in schools with the key worker children, but families could also continue to carry on their eco action, either as a family or to help support the schools as well. And what we were able to do with every one of the topic actions was come up with a task, that you could do as a family. So if you had preschool children, so if you had children from 0 to 5, they could be involved. But also if you had teenagers in the home, they could be involved in the same action, but they might have been looking at it from a slightly different perspective. And what we were also able to do with our team being all former teachers is we were able to link everything to the curriculum. So 2 things that we knew our teaching staff were still having to deliver with their remote learning. And then on the 15th of June, we had 4 of the key year groups were invited to return to school. And those were the ones who may or may not have been having exams in the summer, which ended up actually being cancelled. And then we got a different challenge here in England with our Ecoschools, because our children came back, but they had to work in class bubbles. So the interaction that we really love with the Ecoschools program, and when we're asking different year groups to work together, that wasn't able to happen. So we had to come up with new ways to carry out that within safe and secure class bubbles. And even things like we have eco boards that we encourage our schools to put their actions on, which actually we borrowed after that when we came to visit Ecoschools South Africa. It was a great idea that we saw and we wanted to utilise. But what we found with these eco boards in the schools, that the schools were being deep cleaned and all of the work was taken down. So there were new challenges actually when schools came back. And then in September to December 2020, schools reopened again, but with all social distancing measures, and things started to go back to normal. And then you'll notice here from these dates, after the Christmas holiday, schools opened up again on the 4th of January, and then they shut one day after, except for nurseries, which are still kind of up and running. So at the moment, our schools are not in. There is a kind of mixture of key worker children coming in, but also a lot of remote learning. We're not sure yet. We're thinking March 8th, potentially our schools might go back. But again, we're kind of taking every week as it comes and coming up with new resources. But I probably should flag up as well that the Ecoschools program in England is voluntary. So although we have 20,000 schools, all 20,000 eco coordinators are doing this above and beyond all of the work they have to do. And kind of just to reiterate what Laura said at the end of her presentation, we're so grateful that these teachers have continued to carry on with this Ecoschools work at this time. And I think when you kind of look back at that timeline and see all of these changes and everything that's happening, what's still, though, always been in the back of our mind is that the student voice is still very, very strong. So what I'd like to show you now is a video that was taken just 3 months before the first lockdown happened at our Ecoschools National Award ceremony, when we when we kind of interviewed many of our eco committees who had won national awards for their work that they've been doing for the Ecoschools program. And you can see when I play this just how passionate they are about Ecoschools and how important environmental action is to them. So regardless of everything that was going on, we knew we had to continue to adapt the programme so that these young people could continue to do their work, whether it be in school or whether it be at home. So I'd just like to play this video for you now, and it's the interviews of why the Ecoschools is important.
I think it's really important that all schools become eco-schools, because school is such a big part of a child's life. So being able to integrate environmental practices in school and be able to think about those things is really important for the whole of their life.
I think it's important for all schools to become eco-schools, because if we don't, then the environment will get worse and it won't be a better place to live in. It's better for our environment and it makes us happy and it makes us healthy and active. We need to stop wasting water, and it's a global issue and we just need to sort it out.
It's helping our generation, like our kids and our grandchildren. With the climate changing, we need to become eco so that we can save the planet.
I think it's important for every school to become an eco school because it saves the environment from nasty emissions that we shouldn't really get. Animals are getting killed by these emissions that humans are producing from cars.
The world is it's in a rough patch at the minute and we need to try and make it better, so schools is a way to do that.
We have this wonderful world and we don't want to lose it. Our world is changing and I think people need to be more aware of climate change, since it is our future and it is our our role to show that, so in the future people can live a better life and the environment doesn't get ruined.
And I think, I'm sure you'll agree after watching that you probably know yourselves with children in schools that you're working with. That's how passionate they are. So in South Africa, in the USA, and in all the other countries where we run the Ecoschools program, regardless of how things bad have got with the COVID, we've got these students who want to make this change, and that's what has spurred us on to continue with our Ecoschools work. So school participation then, as I said, that we've had to adapt and change, and there's been different elements to the programme along the way. But surprisingly, actually, since March 2020, the programme is continuing to grow. So we've had 1,581 schools register with the programme. Now, I took that start on Friday, so potentially we could have a few more than that. And also, not only have they registered with the programme and then kind of sat back and maybe thought, okay, we'll continue our work when everything settles down. They haven't. They've registered and they've continued to actually take that action. So we've had 551 Ecoschools green flags that have been achieved during our lockdown. And what's really interesting to see is like literally almost half and half of those are first green flag schools. So new schools who have been with the programme maybe for about a year to 6 months, but also renewal Ecoschools who we asked them to renew their green flag every 2 years in England. So the engagement and the interest in the programme for both old and new schools has remained regardless of the school closures. And then what we also introduced in August is historically we've always carried out face-to-face day training with our eco coordinators up and down the country. Now, obviously we weren't able to do that anymore. So we put together a series of online training sessions that would be carried out after school for our teachers to sign up to and help them through the 7 steps. And one of my team created absolutely wonderful, fantastic set of resources that set teachers and eco committees weekly tasks that they could carry out remotely or that they could carry out with key worker children to help them progress and still achieve that Ecoschools 7 steps. And so far we've had 215 teachers have attended, and all of them, when we go back and look through the schools, have actually progressed through the programme. And I actually think, and we weren't planning on doing this online training, but I actually think this online training is more successful than our face-to-face day training because we've integrated it into what the teachers have to do. The online training is after school, it's for half an hour. And like we said, there's small manageable tasks and things that you can work on over the course of an 11-week period. So the online training is something we're going to continue to do. So then other things that we kind of had to have a look at, you may not be aware, the Ecoschools programming, it's not government funded, it's not backed by the government. So actually the green flag application is the main source of income for our programme. So what we decided to do during the first lockdown was offer renewals to schools, extensions to schools who were due to renew until autumn 2020, when things we hoped would have settled down. Regardless of that, all those schools have still now pretty much renewed their green flag. Any schools who had passed their green flags previously and we knew had done a lot of kind of eco work already, we said that they didn't have to submit all of the evidence. And then also what we introduced, and this was optional because we knew it was something not everybody would be able to do, is we asked some schools if they would like to submit a short video that their children had created to support their Ecoschools green flag application. Because historically we would send in one of our volunteer green flag assessors to visit the school and have a look at the work. And for us, the fact that the Ecoschools programme is student-led goes right through to the assessment procedure. And so what we wanted to do is through these videos, allow our eco pupils to kind of still have their voice and still be heard. So what I've got here is just a short video that is an example that one of our schools sent in. Now, because this was recorded by some parents at home on their phones, the sound is a little quiet in some areas, but there's some text on it. And it was just to give you an idea. All of this was carried out during the first lockdown by one of our schools.
Love the fact that anti-cancer was making the school greener. My favourite thing was making the video for the Navy socks.
I like how that our efforts won't be forgotten in the future and we're doing something to help save the planet.
My favourite thing has been that the scheme has drawn together our existing eco work, provided direction and harnessed the children's boundless enthusiasm to improve their school and the world around them.
Our biggest success has been the Eco Garden because it's amazing. My biggest success were the blue Navy socks.
When we were planting 400 trees.
I would like to put solar panels on the school to save energy.
Help just do a dress up day to raise money or do a beach clean.
So you can see that they've got big plans for things that they still want to go on. What I liked was that some of the children that had planted things before the schools had closed, they were looking forward to going back and seeing if the things that they had planted had grown. But that's just an example of kind of some of the things that our schools have been submitting to us. And then finally, just a few of the other adaptations that we've done. And I've put adaptations here, but I actually think that's the wrong terminology. I'm going to start calling these improvements because these are things that we might not have done. These are things that we maybe had been putting off doing. And actually, they've enhanced the programme. They've opened up new opportunities to the programme. And so it has been a positive out of all of this. So as I mentioned earlier, we launched Ecoschools at Home. Once we'd launched the 10-week challenge, we then also, with a group of influencers, Instagram influencers, we introduced a 10-day challenge for families to get involved in. And then just last week, we relaunched the Ecoschools at Home campaign with 47 eco challenges that can be carried out both at school and at home. And we will send, and we have sent the link to this guide to West Education. And everybody is very, very welcome to download and take part in these challenges. We just ask that if you do, to share that with us so we can all see what's been happening as well. And then one of the other things that we had to do specifically was adapt the 7-step criteria that all of the schools follow. And specifically, it was with eco committee meetings. And again, that was more to do with restrictions of how people could meet, some advice and guidance on how to set up Zoom meetings and so on. And what we also set up for our eco coordinators was a private Facebook group that is just for teachers, where they can go and share ideas and ask for specific help and support implementing and starting new actions. And then we, again, just last week, launched a new remote learning environmental review, which is something that the schools can send out to the children if they're being homeschooled. They can carry out, and they're not reviewing their home, they're reviewing their school by remembering what was in school. We've made it so that it fits on the screen nicely and is simple for children to read. And also it's a very simple layout, just things like it's in black and white, not many images on it. So if the children are printing it out at home, they're not using as much ink and as much paper. And then Cindy mentioned this briefly just before I started. We've always had something called the Mindfulness Minutes campaign here in England, which is about looking at the natural environment and how if we learn to appreciate nature, then we're more likely to help protect it if we can see the links to our mental health and well-being. And what we realised just before Christmas is this, we were kind of going into our third lockdown, the impact it was having on the mental health and well-being of our teachers, our schools, and our families who were homeschooling was starting to show. So what we've created is a series of mindfulness minutes projects that we can carried out over 4 weeks. And the aim is that as a nation or globally, we'll achieve 1 million minutes of mindfulness before the 30th of June. And again, we would love it if any of you that are interested would like to join and take part in that campaign. We can send the resources out to you as well. We've started some new partnerships as well during lockdown, which we wouldn't have necessarily looked at. And a lot of them are doing a lot of action towards the climate emergency. So, for instance, we've worked with Good Energy, who are the largest renewable energy company in the UK. And they came to us in November wanting to recruit a youth board of directors for their company, who were going to help them make decisions about the changes that they would be making in the future. The uptake for that was phenomenal. We closed the deadline for that just last week. We had nearly 1,000 applications, 500-word written applications from young people aged 12 to 18 who wanted to be on that youth board of directors. And so much so, that's now made us need to think at Keep Britain Tidy, do we have a youth board of Ecoschools directors who help advise us on future projects for Ecoschools? And then this is perhaps one of my other favourites here is we've worked with the Halle Orchestra, who are based in Manchester. And what we really loved about this is they'd created climate resources for homeschooling, which were not just linked to science and technology, but were linked to music, dance and arts. And it's opened up this whole new sector of kind of maybe new different teaching departments, new students who might not historically be interested. And I think that's really great for our kind of curriculum link step on the Ecoschools programme as well. And then finally, Laura mentioned briefly at the start, we also have been trying to launch LEAF, Learning About Forests in England, but every time we've gone to launch, there's been a school closure. So fingers crossed, beginning of March, we're going to be launching Learning About Forests as well at Ecoschools. And we've been working with a corporate partner on this who provides outdoor clothing for schools. And so what I wrote the other week is a set of 3 challenges for families to carry out, which again, we're happy to share, called Tremendous Tasks. And they're getting the children to look at the canopy of trees, the trunks of trees and the roots of trees. And these are all things that can be carried out in urban areas as well. And the idea with this is that hopefully if schools can't pick it up because they've got lots of other things they're having to deal with, once everything is settled, we've had so many families and homes involved in this that they would actually then speak to the schools on our behalf and say, look, this is something we'd like our schools to get involved in. And so what next? Well, I saw this image the other day and I thought this is the Ecoschools network nationally and globally. And it's this collective, this group of people helping each other rise up to come up and support each other with their eco actions. And I like to think that the person up at the top there holding on has got maybe an Ecoschools green flag in their pocket and they're going to wave from the top there. But we're going to keep going. We're going to keep listening to our schools. As I said at the start, any things that they need, we will create. We're going to work together. We're going to work together with other nations, hopefully. And again, I spoke to the WESA team this morning, and we said this might not have happened. I might not be here presenting to you guys today if it hadn't have been for the webinars that we've had to set up to support our schools. But regardless, we're going to keep celebrating. We're going to keep looking at all the positive, all the small eco wins, and we're not going to give up. And this, I just wanted to kind of end with, if you're joining the Ecoschools program in England, in South Africa, in the USA, wherever, you will become an Ecoschool for life. Because once you start with the program, you won't want to stop. You won't want to give up that green flag. And this was again taken from our Ecoschools National Award ceremony. And just next to me there is Andy Clark, who is the first ever eco coordinator in England. Their school achieved their Ecoschools green flag in 1998 and have held on to it for over 20 years now. And then on the opposite side there in the green dress is Charlie. She was a child on the original eco committee that was set up in 1994. She's now back at this school, which is called Cannon Burrows, and is a teacher and is helping the new eco committee members there. So it's been a tough year, but we need to remember, like it is on that slide there, Ecoschools now is going into its 27th year. This is just one small blip. We will continue and Ecoschools will be going strong for no doubt another generation as well.
Great, thank you so much, Lee, for sharing the wonderful work with us. I already have requests for all of the resources to be shared. So I'll collate everything from your side and I'll share it with all the participants. And I'll also share it with our wider network of eco schools, leaf schools, and wiry schools in the country. There's a few questions that have come through. I've got a few on my phone from the Facebook live stream. And I know that Lemise is also collating a few. And I think this question was asked by one of the participants here, both for Laura and Lee, is what kind of opportunities has COVID presented beyond what you've presented here for environmental education going forward? I think maybe Laura, you can start and then we'll go to Lee.
Sure. You know, I think that's a great question. I think that there are a lot of opportunities that COVID has opened up. And as Lee detailed, some of it has to do with the development of technologies and resources that can really help to connect people. But there is, in my view, those are tools that help us to connect. But there's nothing that can ever replace the in-person physical connection of people. Just like schools have struggled, we've struggled as a network as well, because we haven't been able to meet in person, and it'll probably not happen again this year. But one way to get over that is to utilize technology like Zoom, like WhatsApp, to be able to connect and share as best you can. I think that it also has shown the importance of certain aspects of nature education, for example, how important it is to connect with nature, using the outdoors as a science laboratory, basically. You can do so much with social distancing and outdoor learning classrooms, school gardens, to really show and make those connections for in all of the core academic areas, but also some of the other ones, such as creative writing, art, and really listening to nature, hearing the sounds of nature and interpreting those. I think that having those resources and being able to get over the hump of the fear of teaching outdoors, because there is we hear that from teachers here in the US. I don't know how to teach outside. I've only ever used a smartboard, or I don't know how to do it. And showing that kids are a lot more flexible than we give them credit for, and they might enjoy some time outside, learning outside and learning how to learn outside. So I think that those are all opportunities that that COVID has presented.
Absolutely. Yeah. Lee, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and I'd just like to say as well, what we've found is we've got a lot more parents who are now following the Ecoschools program, because the Ecoschools, exactly like Laura said, our eco committee members are not afraid to go outside and do some gardening, and even if it's raining, and maybe it was the parents who were, and actually the children are teaching the parents some new skills and some new things, and we found engagement has increased. We've had more parents following us on social media. We've actually had some of our schools telling us that the parents have said, when everything is back to normal again, we want to come in after school, we want to join the school's gardening club, we want to get involved in your eco committee, we have these different skills, or we've got these contacts and the links that we can help your school with. And we might not have had that otherwise. It might have remained, although it is a community project, a school community project, the fact we're now in homes, I think, is going to be helping our schools later down the line. There's this whole new network of parent support that we can now tap into and help our schools.
Yeah, and I think also from our side, you know, the community of practice have become a little bit stronger because we can now actually reach more, or more teachers can join in if it's a Zoom or if it's a Skype call, an online call, whereas physically in terms of like distance in South Africa, that was always a problem. We've got teachers all over provinces in the country that can't necessarily make it to a specific venue or place. And now we can reach more. So that community of practice has also grown. And in South Africa also now looking at professional learning communities where teachers assist each other and help each other to take programs back to their schools and integrate them into their classrooms and their curriculums. There was one other question that I got on my phone before we go to, I see there's lots of questions coming through now. Lee, this one was for you. How did the schools maintain their eco projects to reapply for their green flag if the schools were closed? Was it projects that they did at home? And I think the second video kind of like spoke to that, but yeah.
Yeah, so say for instance, even this is what we're saying, it's very, even though schools were closed, in a lot of our schools, there were always a few group of children in for key worker children. So there was always somebody. And that's the other thing, we had key worker children who might not have been involved in the Ecoschools actions before, now we're becoming involved in the project. So say for instance, the school had done something like they were growing herbs or something like that in the school grounds. What the schools did through Ecoschools at Home is they asked families to try growing them at home, even if it might have been in an old carton or a pot. So what the actions they were trying to do at home, in school, they were showing the school, the families how they can carry that out at home. And some of the other things as well, one of the Ecoschool steps is monitoring and evaluation. And I think it's also very important for growth mindset of children. They know that certain things haven't worked, and this has been beyond their control. But if, and like you saw at the end of that video there, the children like, well, okay, we know this hasn't worked, but when everything's back to normal, we know that we need to grow and we need to go back, and maybe those plants didn't do so well with us not tending to them. So maybe we need to go and plant them in a slightly shadier area. So the negatives, they're still able, and we're definitely, any actions that are carried out at home by our eco committees, we are accepting as evidence for the Ecoschools green flag. We're putting no barriers in with the schools being closed.
Okay, thanks, Lee. Janet is asking that schools are having problems completing their specific have-to-do requirements for the Department of Basic Education. And she wants to know if eco-schools are finding it difficult to complete their want-to-do projects like the eco-schools, seeing that they're already struggling with the have-to-do through the Department of Education in both of your countries.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's one that we hear from teachers all the time. I think the most precious commodity for any educator is time. And, you know, what we've done and what we tell our teachers is that the Ecoschools program is not designed to be additive to their daily work. It is designed to be integrated into the daily work. And in the US, what we did was to align all of the themes and the steps with the standards of learning in the US. Now, here in the US, we don't have a national standard of learning. It's state by state, but we do have our national science standards, for example, have just been updated for the first time in 15 years. And for the very first time, the National Science Standard has the environment as part of it. It actually addresses climate change. Now, states can, here in the US, can choose to adopt those standards or not. But 35 states have adopted the National Science Standards out of our 50 states. So what we do is we align our program, the topics, the themes with the standards that are existing. And that helps teachers because they don't have to do that alignment. We've already done that for them. And it also helps if we are doing a teacher training, for example, and we talk to a teacher about, in the 4th grade, you teach the water cycle. And you still teach the water cycle in an eco school, but maybe you talk about water consumption, or you talk about ways to conserve water usage, or you talk about ways to ensure that water quality is, is high. Those are things that have to do with the environment, but they also have to do with the subject. And so it's just taking the topic and twisting it a little bit to get that other perspective, the environmental perspective. And our teachers have said that that is very helpful as well, just to change the mindset.
And it also enhances the learning experience of both the teacher and the learner if you look at it through that perspective. Yeah. Lee, anything you want to add?
Yeah, very similar to Laura. We've done the same here. We have the national curriculum in England, and then we have Ofsted who inspect the schools and make sure that kind of the framework is being carried out. And so what we've done is exactly the same as Laura. We've mapped the topics, the actions to the curriculum. But what we've also done is this inspection framework is looking for things like our schools helping children to building confidence, team building, etc. We've shown how eco schools can do that. So the eco committee work, all the transferable life skills. So that's available on our website, actually. I'm happy to share that. But through each of the 7 steps, not just the curriculum, but the life skills that you learn by taking part in it. And again, the thing why we really like working with the Halle Orchestra is we tend to, and certainly in England, we map climate curriculum to science and geography. And that's usually the same teachers, usually our volunteer people who are running it. That's why we need to also map it to other areas. So to history, to languages, to different curriculum areas. And that's for us to do, to provide those resources for our eco coordinators and kind of looking at the broader curriculum, not the usual curriculum that you associate with climate action or eco action.
So including it in all of the learning areas.
Yes, we've actually mapped the entire eco schools kind of 7 steps and topics to the primary curriculum, which is when you're from 5 to 12. So you can see every element, and we've got maths in there, we've got history in there, we've got all different ways. And that, we believe, is one of the reasons why the eco schools at home worked, the tasks, because we made sure we had music ones, we made sure we had modern forest. So we asked schools to go and research about all the other eco schools countries and actually find out how to say eco school in different languages. And if you were studying those languages, and go and research about animals that might be endangered in different eco schools countries. So just kind of showing how big the program is.
Sure, absolutely. Shifting the focus to communities. One of the participants are asking, like, how can we use the fee programs to drive recovery in communities or society that have been hard hit by the pandemic and that are also under-resourced?
So I think that there's a way to utilize so many of these tools and resources. One, most of this is available free. It's getting them the information. It's getting that, the tools, the resources that are available to them in a way that they can accept it. I saw in one of the chats is that, in some of the deep rural communities that there is no access to internet or laptops or things like that. Well, then we need to rely on word of mouth and physical, paper-based pieces that we could share, that could be shared with them. I think, we also need to think about there may not be necessarily a laptop or internet connectivity, but often there is smartphone connectivity. And so, maybe that's a way to think about how we can share information. I'm not a highly technical person and in terms of technology, but I think that there, maybe even just having a focus group, with rural areas representatives and saying, what are the biggest barriers for you and challenges? And then what are the greatest opportunities? And seeing how, by talking through that and sharing experiences, we could actually figure out what's the best way to assist people with the programs. I think that that is something, you know, that we could throw out to our network and say, you know, there's, I mean, it's not, certainly not isolated to just South Africa. I think that there, you know, are some of these, we'll find commonalities in many countries, and that we could look into how, you know, we talk through some of these issues so that we can better serve all people in all areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Lee, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, if you look through the chat, I've just seen here now about my internet, when I'm presenting to you guys here, my internet connection is going off, and we're relying so much on this internet connection, and sometimes it's not always working. It's not the best way forward. And Laura's right. What we've tried to do is, there's some areas of England which the very low kind of levels of economic status, English might be the second, third or fourth language that is used in the schools. So we're reaching out to local community leaders, we're reaching out to religious groups, and we're saying, look, you are the people on the ground. What helps specifically? We've got this program. That's what's great about the Ecoschools program. There's these 7 steps, these 10 topics that we have in England. How do you think this will best work in your community? What can we do? And exactly like Laura said, we might work with 2 or 3 key individual people in that local community, and they're the ones who act on our behalf and develop projects that are suitable for that area. And but there's an area that we've been working with in England, which had the lowest level of uptake. And actually we did exactly that. And in 2 or 3 years, they're now working on our Wrigley Littlest campaign. And they've got nearly every single one of those schools is a registered eco school, and they're wanting to be the first with all of their schools at green flag. And that has been because we work with local community groups and asked them to guide with what was happening.
No, absolutely. I think engaging with the people on the ground, the community leaders, youth groups in that specific rural area, to basically like take the program up and run it. Sometimes, you know, how they want to and how they see fit, but also giving them the power to actually like create the eco schools in the context that will best serve them and their community. Lee, in South Africa last year, we actually lost a lot of like registered eco schools because they couldn't, well, first of all, they weren't at school for X amount of months. They couldn't maintain their projects, and at the end of the day, they couldn't defend their eco schools award for that particular year or their green flag. And Donovan is asking, what can we learn from England in terms of, you know, because you saw a clear increase in uptake for the program. Is that specifically the eco schools at home that drove that, and then kind of like feeding it back to schools, or what would you say would be the success to like actually increase the number of schools last year?
I think the big thing was we acted quickly. We, like you said there, with eco schools at home, within 4 days of schools shutting down, we got some resources out. So in some ways we were not lucky, but we were at the right time with resources. One of the things that we did say to our renewal schools is, look, this is beyond your control. Therefore, if you have a deadline for submitting your green flag, we are extending it, and we are extending it by a considerable margin. We are not going to penalise you because of things that are totally out of your control. And the feedback, honestly, we had teachers almost in tears on the phone to us saying, that is so wonderful. Thank you so much. We want to continue, but we don't have the children in. Our eco coordinator is off ill, is sick and is in hospital. So I think what they showed was that actually at the start of the program, we reached out and we said, we understand, we've all been teachers, we know where this is happening. We're allowing this flexibility. Yes, there are these criteria, but like Laura said, they're flexible. These are just the basic guideline. You adapt and you use them. And because we said, we are not going to hold you to that deadline, then when everything was relaxed a little bit, they felt like that the program was caring for what was going on in the schools. And then at the same time, we provided them with tools and resources to get families involved. I think those two things together of what has worked with the program, yeah.
Okay. Laura, anything from your side in terms of like I'm not sure if you know the uptake of eco schools in the US last year. What was there a dip or?
I think
Stable?
that, yeah, I think it was stable. I think part of that is because, my organization did develop a lot of at-home resources, just like Lee's, and it may have been not necessarily to the point where, I mean, Lee's at-home resources are just top notch, and we have our own that had to do more with getting the kids active and outdoors, and spending time outside in nature and how we could utilize that. I think that what we'll see is that there will be, once our schools are back in session, back in person, I think that we will see an uptick of engagement again. We'll probably start to see that in May, June, getting ready for the summer break for us, and then into the fall where schools will start back. And I think, our focus will be on the next year, how to really get, now that we're back in person, what are the things we learned from being at home and teaching and learning from home, and then how can we apply that to some of the tools and resources going forward in the new school year. But I don't think we saw a huge dip.
Right, yeah. So it's really just about being flexible as the national operator or the managers of the programs in each of the countries, and looking at how the program can actually support teachers and schools with their current workload, with their current issues that they have at the school. So not for them to see it as an added task to do, but really how can we use the Ecoschools to make sure that we reach our curriculum goals, the have-to-dos. How can we use the Ecoschools program to reach the targets of the have-to-dos? And I think that's an important lesson that came out for us here in South Africa, and how we take that forward this year. I would just quickly like to respond to one of the questions. For all of the Ecoschools here today, if you didn't submit a portfolio last year, that does not mean that you are scrapped from the program. It doesn't mean that you lose your standing. What it means that this year you would have to defend your 2019 award. So definitely no major repercussions for that. Some of the schools actually did submit portfolios from work that they did at home, projects that they kept going at school, and we will basically assess those and do a virtual award ceremony within the next 2 months. But in terms of schools, do not worry. You are not kicked off the Ecoschools program. You can pick up again from where you started off in 2019 if you didn't do anything for 2020. And also there's a few questions coming through of how to register for the Ecoschools program. Please get in contact with myself, any of the WESA Schools and Youth Program team members, all of our contact details. I think Lamise will share after this, and also our Facebook group, our website, all of our social media platforms. You can get in touch with us. I think this year we'll basically work with a lot of the communities on the ground to see how we can get the program to as many schools as possible. And particularly, I saw we've got some Department of Education people joining us today as well. So working closely with the Department of Education to see how we can start things up and build back better from our learnings of the past. So with that, I would like to close the question and answer session, and just briefly, Laura and Lee, just some inspiration for our South African and all of the other teachers and participants here with us today. What do you want them to take forward from this to build back?
This is just the start of new Ecoschools beginnings. This is just, like I said, it's just a little glitch. We've got new learnings from this time next year.
It'll be history.
Yeah, this is, just use this. This is an opportunity to stop, regather, think about where we want to go, look at new ways we can adapt. Everything in teaching is always about adapting. You don't teach the same thing year on year and year, you always change. It's exactly the same thing with the Ecoschools program. This is just a year when we've had to change a little bit more than normal.
Thanks, Lee.
I think one is that, take inspiration from the small successes that you might have seen, and build on those. The future, our combined future is bright. This is, we are building a better world, and I truly believe that the work that each of you do every day helps our young people to be better equipped to face things like this pandemic, to hopefully they'll be smarter and wiser, and they'll be able to overcome some of these challenges that we have all faced in recent times. But I absolutely feel that this is the starting point, and we can look back and learn from it, but we have to move forward, and that's the key. And I'm really excited to see what happens with Ecoschools and Leaf and young reporters in South Africa, because you have an amazing country and an amazing people, and WESA is in the perfect partner for you to build those programs out in the coming year.
Great, thanks, Laura. Yeah, I think from my side, it's definitely been a learning curve, but one thing that I have learned throughout this is to be as inclusive as possible. We've seen how the COVID pandemic has exposed how not inclusive we are, and I think the first thing that I'm going to start, Lee, is a youth board of directors for the WESA fee programs, and get their voices into how we can take these programs forward. So in South Africa, we've got a very vibrant youth, and they are the future, and we should include them in the future decisions that we make. So that's definitely a takeaway from my side. Just for all of the participants, I will collect Laura's presentation, Lee's presentation, and all the resources that Lee is sharing in the chat, and Lemise will send it out to everyone. We'll also share it on our social media platforms for everybody that couldn't be here today, so that they can also have access to it. Thank you very much to both Laura and Lee. It was such a pleasure to have both of you come and discuss the different issues that you have, but also the different opportunities that you've created out of this pandemic. I will see you on another call in 5 minutes. Lemise, over to you.
Thanks, Cindy. That's the one. Thank you very much for a very stimulating conversation. It's been very engaging, and we have had a lot of great feedback on all platforms that this was shared. So we hope to see everyone on our next webinar. It will be on the 18th of March in celebration of Water Week. And the focus will be on water, hygiene, and sanitation in schools. A very, very interesting topic. Some would say controversial even, but it's a discussion that needs to be had. And we will do this in collaboration with the Department of Water and Sanitation. So keep an eye out on all our platforms. We will be communicating the details of this exciting next webinar with you. But also, as I said, over the next 6 months, we will have various topics that we will share with you. It's just that we went with a bang, the first one, we went international, and so we will bring it back home with the next one. But definitely we will have a lot more international voices coming through as well, because we can definitely learn a lot from each other. So that's the next one. Hope to see you there. Thank you from our team. Please go on all our social media pages and our website to connect with us. Thank you very much, everyone. Goodbye. Bye.